D'accord.
J'étais là, j'attendais juste de revenir.
Ouais, ouais. Et là, so, what presentation do you have?
Google Drive.
Google Drive, Google Drive is good.
Quoi? C'est Mercedes.
Je les ai lâchés à 15h30, je crois. Non, mais en fait, on n'a plus les bons schedules. Il faut que j'aille le dire à Jonathan. Parce que moi aussi, je me suis fait niquer. Ouais, ouais.
Ah oui, bah dans ce cas-là, comment je ne puisse savoir en effet.
Ok. Là, comment tu mets à jour la clé USB là? T'as un truc pour la clé USB?
Tu remplaces la base du plus.
Ouais, je vais aller dire à Jonathan. So.
C'est là en bas à droite, là, c'est ça.
C'est ça?
Ah, c'est ça là.
Turn off the screen for a second so I can test it.
Là, en présentation.
Is it possible to turn off the screen for a little bit? Or no?
Yes.
Si, je veux juste le tester.
Does the clicker work or?
Yes,
This is for?
Yeah.
And this is the mic?
Yeah. It's okay? Test.
C'est bon. Yep. Good. Hey guys, welcome to the talk. So today we're going to be talking about bridging the divide and the issues that we have around UX in the Web3 ecosystem. So just to start off, a little over a year ago, you'd be very hard-pressed to come across individuals who were either very educated or interested in speaking about the UX issues that persist in the Web3 ecosystem. But over the past year, we've made some great inroads as far as understanding the usability concerns and how that impacts the interactions that we have with the technology. So it's no secret that the digital divide is a harsh reality and that we have to be very mindful of the consequences of the decisions that we make today as far as UX is concerned. So the concept of the digital divide is basically the discrepancies between developing and developed economies and the impact that the information technology such as internet has based on the opportunities that are presented to these individuals. So over the past year, we've had this opportunity to really solidify our voice as UX and design in the space, and we have to do a better job of really taking a pragmatic approach to what UX means, what has been done so far, and what role do we need to play moving forward. So to describe user experience, it kind of includes all the user's emotions, beliefs, preferences, perceptions, physical and psychological responses, according to the interactions they have during and after use of a product or a service. So 3 factors that influence user experience that I want to highlight through this presentation are the system, the user, and the context of the use of this technology. So in order to really understand where we stand with this technology and where we lie as an ecosystem as a whole, it's interesting to kind of map Moore's chasm of early technology adoption as far as what nascent technologies go as far as timelines for market adoption, and then kind of overlay that with Gartner's hype cycle to understand where we stood a year ago with peak of inflated expectations and where we're headed for the next little while. So I don't think we're in a position to kind of cross that chasm, but we can definitely do a lot to bridge the gap between early adopters and the early majority for this technology moving forward. One resource that kind of really helps you understand the technology and the intricacies of how everything flows together is the Web3 tech stack developed by the Web3 Foundation, which can be found on their GitHub page at the Web3 Wiki. So as you can see, there's a lot of moving parts and layers in order for dApp to actually present a usable interface to the users at the end of the day. And there's a lot of complex interactions and collaboration and interoperability that needs to happen here. And for most of the part of the past year, a lot of the solutions that have been happening around this area as far as the browsers and the dApp layers, as far as, let's say, meta transactions, universal logins, and burner wallets, which are all solutions to problems that actually exist on the bottom layers. So as advocates for better UX and better usability in the ecosystem, we need to do a better job of getting engaged at the layer 1, layer 2, and the protocol layers to actually advocate for better usable interactions and user flows moving forward. So once we understand the system that we operate in, it's important to understand who are the intended users and who are the users that actually stand to benefit most from the technology that we're working on. So as of this year, we've now passed over 4 billion users for the internet, of which 250 million new users were just added last year. So I believe that's a great opportunity for people to be onboarded to peer-to-peer and decentralized networks that rely on trustless interactions, because they do not really have past mental models to rely on when they do get onto the internet. And as you start looking at the world population in the past century and the century moving forward, you get to see how the demographics start to shape up differently to the world that we have in the Western economy and society. So if you're developing technologies for people to use and benefit from in the future, you get to easily see where the market segments and user use cases are going to be coming from. And unfortunately, a lot of our focus and energy is focused on North America and Europe and the user bases that we're kind of comfortable with. Yeah. And another thing we need to be very mindful of that is that the world kind of runs on mobile now. There's nearly 5 billion unique mobile users, of which about 78% are on the internet. And interestingly enough, about 53% of all internet traffic is mobile these days. Having interface with a lot of projects in the ecosystem, it's sad to say that they're all creating solutions for desktop because a lot of their crypto user base is desktop based at this point. So in order for you to really benefit and engage communities, you need to be mindful of what platforms you choose and what kind of limitations you're presenting when you do not have all different platforms involved. So once you understand the different user segments that you should be targeting, it's important to understand the user behaviors and that people are not looking to use the technology for the technology's sake. They have a certain use case that they're trying to fulfill, and they're going to take the path of least resistance to get to their intended target. So you can try to tell them to secure their key phrases or use better security processes, but at the end of the day, they're going to use the technology as they see best fit, and it's not really going to, you can't really change their behaviors based on how you have a worldview of your technology. So having interviewed some of the largest projects in the space, it becomes very clear that no one's really investing or putting resources behind actual user research and really getting to the bottom of what are the use cases that we should be focusing on and how do you create solutions to get to those solutions, create solutions to get to something that's usable for the user at the end of the day. So one thing that we have to really focus on is the product market fit. And in order for us to do that, we have to go back to the Web3 tech stack and look at opportunities to experiment, iterate, and create user feedback loops. So instead of putting your resources into creating investor communities, you should really be investing your resources in creating user feedback loops that help you develop the technology, share these insights with the rest of the community so we can actually create something that's more cohesive and has better mental models for users to adopt when they do come into the ecosystem. And most importantly, we need continuous iteration. So we can't just rest on our laurels after we've put out a solution. It's important that we do put some sort of metrics in place to gather that data information and create solutions that will continue to improve over time. So as designers and developers in the space, I like to draw the analogy of us being like, let's say, infrastructure developers or city planners. And one good analogy or an anecdote to draw from that is of Robert Moses, who was a city planner in, I believe, the early 90s for New York City. And he was responsible for creating a great divide as far as economics and racial access for individuals in New York because of the bridges that he created on highways. So he created very low clearance bridges that crossed over entrances for highways in New York, which limited people of low income and of certain minorities to really access those resources, such as parks and playgrounds, which were placed very far away. So when we're creating these bridges of interoperability and connection between these technologies, we have to be very mindful of like what consequences, unintended consequences we have with this technology, and who are we marginalizing moving forward. So some of the problems that we've kind of highlighted or the research that we've done over the past little while as a community effort is that people don't really understand the technology and the intricacies of blockchain resources that need to be comprehended. So one of the key problems revolves around key management. This is because it disrupts the onboarding flow. People don't really know how to back up keys or why or how they should do it. There's confusion between passwords and what a private key is. And then clearly there's a lack of recoverability. So some emerging patterns around this is such things as progressive tiered security models, disposable keys that users don't have to back up, or multiple private keys for local wallets. So you're seeing solutions like burner wallets, ways of managing keys on some centralized servers, and other solutions coming into play. Another huge problem is the concept of gas, because it's a novel experience. People don't really understand what gas is and how that all ties together. The concepts and terminology around gas are quite counterintuitive as well, because we see gas as distance when we're dealing with transportation, and that's not quite the case in blockchain terminology. And also variations in gas prices for identical actions is not really conducive to mass adoption use cases. So emerging patterns in this space are around abstract gas interactions for new users through different methods of relayers, actually paying for the gases yourself. There's also options to give modular options for advanced users so they can actually decide how to interface with gas in your applications. In addition, we need better solutions around gas stations to kind of standardize gas around the ecosystem. And finally, transactions and the concept of transactions is quite complicated as well. People don't really understand the relationship between transactions, what that means for wallets, how that ties into the blockchain and the blockchain explorers. So people make mistakes of sending multiple transactions, don't know how many times they have to approve transactions, and kind of are confused by the signing transactions because it's a new interaction pattern by itself. Some emerging patterns in this space are around giving human readability and transparency to transactions such as NatSpec or RedSpec, or providing better in-app history and transaction context indicators whenever possible. Some other solutions include transaction queue managers for multiple transactions. So the key point that I wanted to highlight with this presentation was that we play a very integral role in developing these technologies and the consequences that we have moving forward. So it's time that we kind of take ownership and accountability for what we're creating and start having larger conversations and collaborate together to come to better solutions. So if you're interested in UX, we have large communities online based around Telegram, and we also have a community that has a forum online for everyone to kind of get involved, voice their concerns, and if you guys want to get involved on the Telegram community, just hit me up on Twitter and reach me after the talk. We'll discuss ways for you guys to get involved and kind of highlight the issues that you guys see and how we can move forward. Thank you very much. Any questions? Thanks.